joins me here to talk food. Welcome in today. It's a pleasure to have you in on Ticker.
Hi, how are you?
Fantastic, and it's a pleasure to have you in, as we mentioned. Now, I love the idea of living a more conscious lifestyle. What does this mean to you?
Yeah, look, I think living a conscious lifestyle, it's about embracing and creating awareness, self-awareness, basically. So I think too often in life we drift along and we accept things in life just because that's the way we've been told, the way we've been brought up, that's the way society expects us to do things. So I think living a conscious life, it's about taking control of your life and understanding the how, what, where, and why we do the things that we do. And once you have this clear understanding, then you can start to free yourself of conditioning and make decisions that are right for you and for what you believe in and what you want to manifest in your life. So this can apply to so many different elements in your life, you know, from relationships through to jobs that you take, the food that you eat and the choices that you make and everything, yeah.
And what exactly do you mean here when you say it's beyond just life? You did touch on relationships there. I guess a lot of people would think when you talk about plant-based, it's just diet and veganism and things like that. You're just talking about food. But can you just elaborate a little bit more here?
Yeah, look, I think sometimes we accept things because, like I said, we've been conditioned to accept things, and that can deem, like I said, from relationships through to jobs and prospects and so forth. So once you sort of start opening yourself up to understanding why you make the choices that you make, is this a conscious choice that you truly believe in and that you really want to embrace? And then you can kind of go for it. But there have been times in my life, for example, that I've done things just because that was the way I was brought up. And once I understood that I was, let's say, in relationships, you know, choosing partners because that's the way I'd been conditioned, I started to be able to make better choices for the people that I was willing to have in friendships and you know, spouses and so forth.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, you know, you grow up with things and you're influenced by others around you. So what's your best advice for those who want to be more conscious, and where does that begin?
Look, I have kind of three basic tips. I think you've got to ask yourself some really simple questions, sort of, you know, and it starts with, how are things made? Where do they come from? What's the impact of the choices that I'm making, whether it's on myself, on, you know, my lifestyle and so forth. And once you open your eyes to understanding that process, you can start to say, am I okay with this? And the answer is going to be different for each individual person. And then after that, you sort of have to do some research. You know, I'm a naturally curious person. And if we're talking about products that you want to consume, for example, you know, I like to do a bit of research on it, but not everybody has the time and it can be a bit overwhelming. There are some fantastic people out there that have already done a lot of this research for you. So you can just Google things. That's pretty easy. And then I think the third tip is probably don't get overwhelmed. There's a lot of information out there. Start by making small changes in your life. It could be small career changes. It could be big career changes. It could be food choices. It could be the type of car that you drive, the energy that you consume, you know, all of these different aspects. But ask questions. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, some great advice there. Now, just before we wrap up, obviously we're in a world where, you know, climate change and sustainable living is on the world stage. So what do you think is next for the plant-based industry as a whole sector?
Look, I think it's such a fascinating time for the plant-based industry. There's a couple of things. I believe that right now we're going through a bit of a resurgence on the faux meat side of the industry because that's very accessible for people who aren't in that plant-based world. I think beyond that, we'll start to see sort of trends in the animal byproduct sector. And once we've done that, then we'll start looking at, you know, are those products healthy for us or not healthy for us? And I'm hoping then we'll sort of circle back around to sort of a more whole food style lifestyle. And I think from a human perspective, you know, Western nations or developed nations like ours, you know, we've got a lot of choice here, and they'll embrace more of a part-time conscious living or start to embrace more plant-based food in their diets and so forth, whereas other developing nations might have a slightly different path. You know, they're coming from a different socioeconomic situation. So they'll probably go through higher meat consumption before they sort of circle back around to the same sort of things that we have.
Yeah, and definitely a global effort moving towards that. Well, thank you for sharing your tips today, Heaven. It's been great having you on, and hope our viewers can learn a few things or two for being a more conscious consumer.
Have a nice day.